Oh, there's a cat in the
Oh, where'd he
background.
go? Oh, there he is. Yeah, that's Jackson. He's very needy. My name is Jeff Willis. I've been an artist for as long as I can remember, even all the way back in school. I've spent about 20 or so years in video games, different types. I've done casual games. I've done some computer games. Lately, I've been more freelance and I'm doing some work on some tabletop games and whatever other kind of freelance or contract work catches my interest. I just love to sit and draw and paint and try to come up with fun and funny things whenever I can.
Have you played the Harry Potter games?
It's been a long time, but yes, I have, of course.
You've done the artwork for a bunch of cards, right?
Yes, I did roughly 30 designs for the Wizard cards for the first two games. First game, the list was a specific, I think, selection of the cards that we were given to work from. It may have been for time constraints, I don't remember, but when the second game came along, we were given a lot more freedom and we knew the process, so things were running a little more smoothly. So what they did was they had one artist design the frame and come up with 3 different, I think it was, levels of color for the frame. And we had to work within that little space in the middle. I'm quite sure it was J.K. Rowling who came up with the list of wizards who were going to go in the game. We got the list and there were at least 3 of us artists who got to design the cards, and it was just kind of first come, first serve. We would just pick and choose whatever we wanted to do based on the name and description. I enjoyed it so much. Every chance I got, I would just try to grab something from the list and just have some fun with it. I'd try to get to stuff before other people did sometimes. The process was I would look at the description and I tend to research way too much. So if I came up with a character who was of a certain age or a certain period in time, I would create my mood board. I would just print out a bunch of sheets of paper with different photographs of people from the different times, different hairstyles and whatnot. And I would just start cobbling my own little character together from that. From those pencil sketches, I would send them in for approval to creative director, and he'd give me the green light and I would start painting. It was all done in Photoshop, but initially it was pencil and paper. Just happen to remember a funny little anecdote. My creative director, Phil, if you're watching, I love you. But our creative director did some of the cards too, but sometimes he would have a little trouble and he would ask me to draw the hands for him. So that was, I thought that was kind of fun.
How much description did you get for each character? Was it just like a sentence or 2?
More often than not, it was a very brief description, sometimes with a year span or some geography where they were from and what their contribution to the wizarding world was. So like, I think it was Kwang Po, he knew how to raise dragons or something like that. So I had him holding a dragon egg. So the descriptions weren't really verbose, but they were very specific.
I saw that some of the characters are based off people that you know. For example, there's one that was influenced by your wife or your dad, and there's an idealized version of yourself.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you got any more examples of this, or like how many would you say you based off real people?
Well, there were just the 3 that were based on real people, but the others, a lot of them were influenced by photos with my overindulgent researching. I would find some characters that just had a lot of lines and character in their face, and I would use certain features and nose here, some creases in the eye there. There were a few that were just kind of influenced for other people I've seen on screen. I think there's one character. He invented the self-stirring cauldron, and he has white hair, and he's somehow loosely based on Steve Martin. I had him in mind for some reason when I put him in there. There's another character, I think it was Fulbert the Fearful. He's just kind of cowering into the corner of the card. I think I designed him loosely after Don Knotts. Must have been watching some old movies or something when I was designing those.
Did you work for KnowWonder, or was it like contracted?
I did work for KnowWonder. I was there full-time for about 5 years. KnowWonder got the contract through EA Games. EA would subcontract other companies to actually produce the games.
How much interaction did you have with Harry Potter before the films and I suppose the games came out? Because the books were around for what, like 4 or 5 years before?
I think so, yeah. And when we got the contract at KnowWonder to work on the games, I'd heard of it. And that was it. I knew nothing about it. I do remember seeing the advertising blitzes in the store windows with all the books, and they said they were making a movie of it. So yeah, I really had no experience with reading the books before then. But once I started, I would read the books, I would listen to the audiobooks with Jim Dale narrating, and it was really, really good. And I still love the movies. My wife is even a bigger fan than I am. Whenever the movies come on TV, she has to watch them. And we even listen to the books when we're driving. So yeah, we love the Harry Potter franchise.
I saw you also did some concept art for at least the first Harry Potter game.
Yeah, that was an interesting side of that. When we got the contract for the movie, the studio refused to give us any images to pull from because everything was under their non-disclosure. So it was under lock and key, so we couldn't see anything. But the 3D artist needed something to start building from. Part of my assignment was to just make some stuff up based on the creatures or characters that were going to be in the game. So I did a lot of pencil sketches so that the modelers could get some things going. So when it came to something like Fluffy, I had no idea what a three-headed dog was going to look like. So I just started putting some stuff together. I think I got lucky with that one, and that I actually picked the right breed of dog so that it looked pretty darn close. A lot of the sketches never made it into the game, again, probably because of time constraint. But there were a couple of creatures that I designed that actually wound up in the final game, like I think it was called the fire crab, which was a turtle that shoots fire out of its backside, a snail that left trails of fire or something like that. So yeah, I guess that's my claim to fame for those games was I actually got a couple of creatures into the game.
I find it interesting how they didn't tell you, or anyone really, I suppose, certain things about the game. A lot of people still like the games because they kind of have their own identity in a way, because everything is a bit different. Like the music is, while it's still obviously orchestral, it's a completely different style almost.
Everyone involved in those games were terrific talents, and given the chance, I'd love to work with them again too.
You've also worked for Big Fish Games.
That was probably the ultimate. I loved working for Big Fish. I think that really kind of also fleshed out some of the wide range of things I've done. I've done some cute animals, I've done people, I've done backgrounds, I've done a little bit of animation, touched on that. I've had to be a bit of a chameleon because I don't always know what's coming. So when I was working at Big Fish, for example, they would say, okay, here's your next game, here's the style, or you come up with the style. Yeah, you just have to really be ready to shift gears because things will change.
And you've also worked on tabletop games, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's new for me. And I don't have any final products to show, except for one. I've got one called Dinos Not Assembled.
Ooh.
So I did the artwork illustrations for Thing 12 Games. So I had a lot of fun with that, designing cute little dinosaurs and all the cards. I had so much fun with that one. And I've got some more games working with Thing 12 Games. Well, my NDA won't allow me to talk about them very much, but I've got a couple things in the pipeline. I've got enough to keep me busy for a little while.
It must be nice also to have something physically tangible for once with your artwork on.
It is. It's really satisfying to be able to pick something up and look at it and actually just sit down and play with some friends.
Let's have a look at some questions that people have asked me to ask you. There was a lot of questions that people sent in. Olga asks, were you inspired by any particular artists when you made these cards? And Tara asked, did you get any inspiration from any comic artists?
That's a good question. Sometimes I would find something that a character description that would kind of evoke, in my mind, a specific artist, maybe from a pose or something. I can't even remember what the artists were. I think maybe there was one of the Dutch masters kind of influenced one image. Oh, what's the artist's name? Who did Asterisk?
Oh, I can't remember.
Well, he did inspire one of the characters who was Greek, and I loved the asterisk art. And so I kind of wanted to mimic his style a little bit. There is no one source, but yeah, there were a lot of inspirations from different artists.
G Reviews asked, what was the most taxing card to design and what was the least?
The most taxing for some reason, and I think that the one I'm least satisfied with, was Beatrix Bloxham. I think it was kind of a Beatrix Potter type of character. She wrote children's stories. I don't know why I had such a struggle with that one. The easiest might have been, well, I had to say my wife Marlene. Hers was easy. My dad, Flavius Belby, he looked kind of bedraggled because he'd just been attacked by a lethofold. So he's just kind of leaning on a bedpost and his face is very drawn. I kind of wish I had thought of doing my dad earlier so that I could have given him a better character, but he was the very last one I did. So I had no choice but to give him that character.
And they also ask, what was your favorite and least favorite? But I suppose we know which one is your least favorite already.
Yes. I think my favorite was probably Birdie Bot. I just had a lot of fun, doing a very jovial and jaunty character who does nothing but invent candy.
Bob Jones says, how did you make Hesper Starky look so iconic?
I remember working on Hesper Starky. I read the description and her timeline in that. So I figured, okay, I'll do a little research, see what the clothes looked like during that time. And I saw that that was the time of the Gibson girls, and they wore their hair the same. They wore very similar clothes. So I thought, boy, that is a very kind of specific style, and I'm going to do that. So I just gave her that great big old tall hair and the shoulder pads, kind of tilted her head down to give her that kind of all-knowing look and holding that bottle. And so that's where that comes from.
Someone was interested in the inspiration for the backgrounds of the cards as well.
When I would work on them, I would try to make the background evocative of the character or their characteristics in the character description. There was one, I think it was Bridget Wenlock was the character, which was based on my wife. She was a wizard or witch who was into numbers, and the number 7 was very magical. And so I put a bunch of different number 7s in the background. And of course, I made my wife that character because she's an accountant, so she's into numbers.
Henry Park asks, are there any cards that you wished you illustrated that you didn't get to do?
I think there was one that I had designed, I don't remember which one it was, that I probably did have to design it about 3 times, and the lead artist from EA didn't like it. He didn't like the expression I was giving it, and I didn't want to do it his way because I thought we'd already done that expression with another character. So he finally got fed up and gave it to a different artist to design. I think it was the character with the jellyfish on his head. I suppose that one would have been fun to actually get in there, but Tony was the artist who did that one. He did a great job, of course.
Miyazumi asks, how did you get the job in the first place?
Well, I was just starting out in the games industry. Before that, I was designing t-shirts for about 12 years, and it was a lot of fun for a while. But after about 1,000 Tasmanian Devil t-shirts, I figured it was time to move on. One day I saw an ad at KnowWonder, and I went over and I applied for the job, and they loved my work. They loved my portfolio. I brought my sketchbook. If someone is ever looking for a job in art, bring a sketchbook with you. That way you get to see how your mind works and how things develop. So anyways, it was the best interview I'd had in my life. Then a year went by, and they called me back and say, hey, can you come back in and have another interview? And I said, yeah, sure. It took a year, but I eventually wound up getting in at KnowWonder, and my first project was Totally Angelica. Got to work with the Rugrats, but it was a lot better than touching up stock photography.
P-Mate asks, how much did you see of the whole game project while you were working on your designs?
Occasionally we would have a little show and tell to show the progress. Other than that, if you wanted to see what was going on in some part of the game, you just have to walk down the hall and talk to somebody. But it was really fun to see like the 3D artists doing some modeling, some of the characters, or somebody adding a bit of particle effects. The final battle scene, like with the basilisk, it was really fun to see some of the earlier versions of that, before all of the shading and rendering, but just to see the action of the basilisk coming in to attack you in early stages was really a lot of fun.
Are you surprised at how Harry Potter is still such a big thing?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I had no idea it was going to be as big as it is. I'm not surprised it's still a big thing, but I am surprised it's even bigger than ever. I mean, the entire franchise, it's all over the place, the theme parks and all of the merchandise. Yeah, it's still huge, and it's fantastic. I love it.
You have a lot of people who ask you about making the wizard cards, like people emailing you. I assume that's something that you quite like.
I do. I love hearing about it. I'm surprised I get so many emails all over the world. I've got emails from Europe, got one from Spain, got a couple from Russia and France, I think even one from Puerto Rico, New York. And I'm glad that they told me how much they love seeing these wizard cards on my website, because there was a period where I was thinking about just taking that part of the website down. My friends say that your work is all over the place, but I just love getting that correspondence, and I love being able to answer questions. It's really nice to actually get fan mail.
It's amazing how people are still so into what feels like such a tiny part of the Harry Potter world.
Yeah, it was such a small part of my overall career. I'm not even
Yeah.
sure how long it was. I was on the project, maybe a couple of years, through the entire process, but I remember it very well. And I'm just so pleased that it was such an important part of the childhood of a lot of fans out there. And I'm pleased to be a part of it.
What are some of your happiest memories of working at KnowWonder?
Well, aside from the art, the people. I mean, there's so many wonderful people there, and I tend to get overly attached to people. No wonder, Big Fish. I just miss that kind of banter and laughter and being a part of a work family. Yeah, I think I miss that most of all. It was a lot of fun. Plus, at one point, I had my own office, which was really cool.
What are you looking forward to doing in the future with your creative work?
Well, in a perfect world, if I could do whatever I want. I've got some ideas I'm playing with for children's stories. I love children's books. I'd love to be able to illustrate one someday. I'm making a feeble attempt at writing one that's probably way too creepy and scary for adults to buy for their kids. I also have comic strips that I love to work on. That's always been my first love. I wanted to be a comic strip artist. But of course, there's no such thing as a newspaper anymore. So that world is different. But anything involving that kind of a sequential visual art, whether it's a picture book or comic strip, I love kind of telling a story in that way.
Would you want to do more video games?
If the right game came along, probably, sure. Yeah, I think I probably would. Yeah, especially in that early stage where you're brainstorming. I love that kind of environment and you're just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And I think that's one of the most satisfying aspects of video games is just getting something from the ground up.
Thank you very much for talking. It's been great hearing more about the history and the background of the Harry Potter games.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. And I'm honored to be here. And it's so nice to hear that you and others, actually remember it that way with, the lighting and the experience, the overall kind of atmosphere. And it really says a lot about the team and the people involved who actually put that together. And on their behalf, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. When did you first discover the Harry Potter games?
The second one, I think, came out in 2002. And that one, I can remember us having the second game from before I could remember, because I would have been like 7-ish. So that was very early. I remember we had I think it was a demo for the first one, but for some reason it was only in Spanish. So we didn't get very far.